Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Lindsey series. This is one of the 9 districts of Lincolnshire and one of the county's most rural. It has 128 civil parishes. Let's see which one this episode's all about. Welcome back to West Lindsey, everybody. Would you believe it's August? It's August the 2nd and it's absolutely tipping it down. Today is going to be one of the worst days I think I've ever had weather-wise, but these villages that I'm planning on doing today will hopefully make up for that. I'm in a very small hamlet to start this one off. This is Usselby, and you'll find this in the parish of Osgodby. The West Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Greyingham, near Curtin in Lindsey. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Did you know that Walt Disney's ancestors came from Lincolnshire? No, I didn't either. Welcome to Osgodby, which lies to the west of the A46, a few miles north of Market Rasen in West Lindsey. Anciently recorded as Angotby, some Lincolnshire locals pronounce this as Osgarby, omitting the D in its name. This is a simple village but a complicated parish containing, as it does, 4 settlements: Osgodby, Kirkby, Kingerby and Usselby. Osgodby was anciently parished with Tealby, but was annexed to Kirkby in 1737 because the village church had fallen into decay. In April 1936, Kirkby was abolished and a new parish called Osgodby was established. The parish council terms itself Kirkby cum Osgodby as a result. Historically, there are things of note about this large slice of Lincolnshire, despite it being predominantly farmland. Medieval settlement remains here include part of Tournay Manor, which was established during the 14th century. During World War II, there was an army camp and 60 accommodation huts were dispersed within nearby woodland. Many foundations are still visible and one building remains close to the A46, but its function is unknown. Usselby and Kirkby are notable too for a few things, but it's Kingerby that arguably has the best history of all here. It's there where we learn about a castle and Lincolnshire's connection to Walt Disney. Let's go. To begin, we're in one of the smaller settlements around Osgodby. This is Usselby, a former civil parish in its own right. Here's its church, dedicated to St Margaret. It's a Grade 2 listed building dating originally from the 14th century. It was modified in 1749 and again in 1889 by Hodgson Fowler of Sheffield. Over the west door there's a tablet inscribed "Queen Anne's bounty fell to this church in MDCCXLIX. This is a reference to an early 18th century Act of Parliament known as Queen Anne's bounty, which provided extra income for poor incumbents. The church is about the only thing of note that's publicly accessible here. Off limits is Usselby Hall, another Grade 2 listed building dating from the mid-18th century. It was once owned and lived in by Lord Tennyson's grandfather, and during World War II it was used as a German officer prisoner of war camp. The hall also covers most of the site of Usselby's deserted medieval village. I genuinely can't remember the last time we had a day like this. The rain absolutely siling it down. There's a good Lincolnshire word for you, siling it down. It's amazing. You wouldn't think it's August, would you? I think the last time I had a day like this was sometime in the autumn last year. You don't expect it in the summer, do you? Anyway, here we are then in Osgodby for the main walk, and we're starting on what is effectively the village green. You can see we've got a phone box there. We've got a chapel of some description. There's a village sign there as well. It's all here. Let's go for a walk. Our first landmark is a former Wesleyan Methodist chapel. Built in 1897, it replaced an earlier one dating from 1840. In use until at least the 1970s, it's now been converted into two houses. On the small green next door we've got the phone box, and if you can see through the rain on the camera lens, you can just about make out that it's a book exchange. A lot of these West Lindsey villages north of Market Rasen have these helpful history boards. Here you can see the layout of the parish from east to west. Osgodby doesn't have a lot to write home about, but that doesn't mean it's boring. Strung out as it is along this one main street, the properties it possesses vary in style. One of them, which resembles a farmhouse, is perhaps the most interesting. It's another chapel dedicated to Our Lady and St. Joseph. It's one of the few late 18th century Roman Catholic chapels left in Britain. It was the kind of building in which Roman Catholics worshipped during the harsh days of legal repression. So whilst this one is mainly residential, there are a few amenities. We're coming towards a school in a few moments' time, and opposite us here is something the village used to have, and that's a post office. This white cottage here is the old post office. It says so on that door right there. As you amble down the road, you pass a sign for a school. We're heading towards that, but on the way there's a couple of other landmarks. Osgodby has no pub, but it used to have one. I have no information on when it closed, but this was it. It was called the Crown Inn, once run by a fine local brewer named Tom Woods. We've seen the old post office, but there is still an active one. To the untrained eye, this looks just like a normal house, and I suspect it still is for the most part, just with the post office added later. Outside we have the parish notice board, and Osgodby is done. We have just 17 left to go to now in West Lindsey. And here we are at the school. Osgodby Primary School began its life as an infant school back in 1868, but now caters for all primary age children. Originally, Kirkby was the settlement that had the local school. It was a national school and was built in 1822. It closed in 1870, 2 years after this one was established. Okay, so we're approaching the end of the village, and at the end we need to turn right and then right again. That will take us over the playing field, and there's a handy little footpath which runs alongside the school, which will bring us back to this road. Simple enough village really, just I wish this weather would clear up. We've reached the corner of Mill Lane. The clue is in the name. Like many other local villages, Osgodby used to have a windmill, and it was used to grind corn. Mill Lane leads south towards the A1103 and West Rasen, passing through an area known as Osgodby Moor. Not too far down the road, we have the entrance to Osgodby Village Hall. This is where we find the playing field, which includes a football pitch. Again, like the pub, there was scant information about this area, but I would imagine the hall and the playing field are run like any other good hall and playing field would be. Here is the hall, by the way. It's a pretty modern affair, this one, it seems. This area also features a small playground, behind which there's a footpath which will take us back to Main Street via the rear of Osgodby Primary School. Pegasus Childcare Centre is worth a mention as well. It's a nursery and preschool next door to the school, which has been going since 1998, caring for children from the age of 2 years old. Okay, so we're back outside the school after walking down the path alongside it. That's effectively the main walk complete. Of course, we're not done with this one just yet because we still need to cover Kingerby and Kirkby as well. I'll go there in a moment, but between here and the car, it's simply a case of taking a few more shots and showing off a bit more of Osgodby that you haven't already seen. Okay, so we've made it back to the car. That took me just over half an hour to walk around the main village here in Osgodby Parish. And of course, there are two more settlements that I haven't yet touched. One of them is Kingerby and the other one is Kirkby. And to get to them both, you go this way, past the chapel, past the green, and the first one you come to is Kirkby. As you leave Osgodby to the west, you pass the War Memorial, a cross enclosed within some railings. This was dedicated on Good Friday in 1921. Entering Kirkby, the first thing you'll notice on the left is the parish cemetery. It's a pretty decent size and there's still space for more future burials. Now we're in Kirkby. This is much smaller than Osgodby and much more clustered. Had this still been a parish in its own right, it would have been a very short episode. Kirkby's standout feature is its church. Dedicated to St Andrew, this is the main Anglican church in Osgodby Parish. It dates from the early 13th century and it's built of limestone and ironstone. The nave was rebuilt in 1825 and the whole church was restored in 1891, 1900 and 1923. Its churchyard contains the base of a medieval limestone cross too, which dates from the 14th century. Now, don't be fooled because you're about to see a second church. We've now hopped half a mile or so to the west again to Kingerby. This is St Peter's Church. Unlike St Andrew's, this one is redundant and is under the care of the church's Conservation Trust. There's still one service held here annually and it takes place on Good Friday at 2 p.m. It was open too, so I went in to have a little look around. St Peter's is, according to the writer Simon Jenkins, one of the 1,000 best churches in England. The current church is said to be the third to stand on this site and it's close to a Roman camp and some Iron Age post holes. The west wall of its nave is almost certainly what remains of a former Saxon church. This church has three monuments which commemorate members of the Disney family, ancient ancestors of the filmmaker Walt Disney. Apart from this church, they once owned Kingerby. Dead opposite the church is Kingerby Hall, which isn't really visible because it's behind this huge clump of trees, and that's why it's the subject of today's special section. Although Kingerby was first settled over 2,500 years ago, it grew mainly in the 12th and 13th centuries. The reason why can be attributed indirectly to Kingerby Hall. There are very few images of the hall out there, so some of these are its surrounding buildings. The hall, which is sometimes known as Kingerby Manor, is situated on the site of a Motte and Bailey castle and a later moated manor house. The castle was built sometime prior to 1216, the year in which it was burnt down by King John. By 1218, the castle had been fully destroyed. The castle's motte was then altered to form a platform for a manor house. That would stand until 1812, when it was replaced by the modern Kingerby Hall, which was built for James Young. As for the village, its population had begun to decline by the 17th century. It remains tiny today, but it once supported not only the castle, but also a tithe barn, the church, and the planned village. So much history in such a small space. You know, in some ways, I think that's one thing that this country gets wrong. We should be able to appreciate our grandest halls and mansions and, you know, be able to see them a bit better than having to look through trees. Of course, the reason for it is to keep them private because they're expensive things and it's to keep out intruders. But really, you know, it would be nice to appreciate the architecture a little bit more, wouldn't it? You know, by being able to see it. Anyway, that's been the parish of Osgodby, and it's time for me to move on to my next one. I'm hoping this rain doesn't come with me. It's a couple of miles to the north and I'm hoping it doesn't follow me. I'll see you there in 7 days' time. And that brings us to the end of Osgodby Parish. That's one I'm not going to forget in a hurry because it's loaded with so much stuff. The next one is a bit different. These tricky little narrow lanes, which lead first to the west and then to the north, will take us to a much smaller settlement, all about farming. I'll see you there, guys. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.